Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi. Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parirajikacharya, Ashtotara Satta, Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Iskcon founder, BBD founder, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parirajikacharya, Ashtotara Satta, Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Purushottam Kshetra Jaganapuri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Agyantamarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarane Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanyebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we're continuing with Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, the smiling face of Lord Krishna. Chapter 77, where Krishna slays the demon Shalva, and picking up at text 31 today. So if you want to follow along, I guess you can use, there might be a book or two there. Kva shoka maha snehova Bhayam va yegyan sambhavaha Kva chakandita vijnana Jnanaishwarastva kanditaha Kvashoka mahasnehova Bhayam vaye gyan sambhavaha Kvachakandita vijnana Jnanaishwaryastva kanditaha. Please chant. Swashoka mahasnehova Bhayam va yegyan sambhava Swanchandi jnana Jnanaishwaryastva kanditaha Kvashoka mahasnehova Bhayam vayegyan sambhavaha Kvachandita vijnana Jnanaishwaryastva kanditaha. Vaishnavis. Kvashoka mahasnevaha Bhayam vayegyan sambhavaha Kvachandita vijnana Jnanaishwaryastva kanditaha Kvashoka mahasnehova Bhayam vayegyan sambhavaha Kvachakandita vijnana Jnanaishwaryastva kanditaha. Kwa, where? Shoka, lamentation. Moha, and bewilderment. Sneha, material affection. Va, or. Bhayam, fear. Va, or. Yea, those which. Agya, out of ignorance. Sambhava, born. Kvacha, and where on the other hand. Akandita, infinite. Vijnana, whose perception. Jnana, knowledge. Aishvarya, and power. tu but akanditaha, the infinite supreme Lord. Translation and purport of Vyasadev's scribed Srimad Bhagavatam by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. I forgot to invoke Vyasadeva. Sorry about that. Na Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. How can lamentation, bewilderment, material affection, or fear, all born out of ignorance, be ascribed to the infinite Supreme Lord, whose perception, knowledge, and power are all similarly infinite? Purport. And this is actually translation and purport by the servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada writes, lamentation, aggrievement, and bewilderment are characteristics of conditioned souls. But how can such things affect the person of the Supreme, who is full of knowledge, power, and all opulence? Actually, it is not at all possible that Lord Krishna was misled by the mystic jugglery of Shalva. He was displaying his pastime of playing the role of a human being. All the great Bhagavatam commentators conclude that grief, illusion, attachment, and fear, which arise out of ignorance of the soul, can never be present in the transcendental, dramatic pastimes enacted by the Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami gives many examples from Krishna's pastimes to illustrate this point. For instance, when the cowherd boys entered the mouth of Aghasur, Lord Krishna was apparently astonished. Similarly, when Brahma took away Lord Krishna's cowherd boyfriends and calves, the Lord at first began to look for them, as if He did not know where they were. Thus, the Lord plays the part of an ordinary human being so as to relish transcendental pastimes with His devotees. One should never think the personality of Godhead is an ordinary person, as Shukadeva Goswami explains in this and the following verse. And to get the context, I want to make a couple comments, and I'm going to read the verse before it and the verse after it together. So, Shalva, the demon Shalva, has rode in on his transcendental magic spaceship, and the special soldiers have whisked all the queens away into the palace for safety, and the battle has begun. Shalva is playing his magic tricks with his spaceship, and Krishna seems to be taken by surprise and bewildered, as it were. And so that brings us to the context of this verse. So beginning at text 29, I'll just relate. Actually, verse 28, let's start there. By nature, I think it starts a little before there. Anyway, so Lord Krishna appears to be bewildered and taken by surprise. And it's related that that certain sages speak this way about the Lord. It says in the verse prior to it, we'll just start at 30, "Such is the account given by some sages, O wise king. But those who speak in this illogical way are contradicting themselves, having forgotten their own previous statements. How can lamentation, bewilderment, material affection, or fear, all born out of ignorance, be ascribed to the infinite supreme Lord, whose perception, knowledge, and power are similarly infinite?" And the servants of his divine grace say at the end of this purport that this is brought out many times by Srila Jiva Goswami, that this is the Lord playing the part of an ordinary human being for the purpose of lila or pastimes, for the purpose of enjoying relationships and interactions with his devotees. Then in text 32, it says, "By virtue of self-realization, fortified by service, rendered to his feet, devotees of the Lord dispel the bodily concept of life, which has bewildered the soul since time immemorial. Thus they attain eternal glory in his personal association. How then can that supreme truth, the designation of all genuine saints, be subject to illusion?" As is often the case when you're assigned a verse to present in a class, or even simply in just reading Srila Prabhupada's books, they prove themselves to be alive by it being exactly what you need to hear, or it dovetails and corresponds with other things that you're reading or other things that you're hearing, or statements that a devotee may make to you in conversation. It's very interesting. I'm in the process of helping my Guru Maharaj record Chaitanya Charitamrita in the mornings for the BBT audiobooks. And we just this morning read the account of Prakashananda Saraswati, the Mayavadi sannyasi, who once the Lord comes to Varanasi or Kashi, is informed by a Mahastrian Brahmana that Prakashananda is blaspheming Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a pretender and a sentimentalist and so on. And Prakashananda Saraswati is actually the head of the Mayavad sannyasis. Varanasi is, I guess it still is, and was at that time, a center of pilgrimage for Mayavadis. And for those of you that may not know, Mayavadi is what the term that we give to those who believe that the supreme truth is impersonal, that basically there's just power or light or even a universal mind and intelligence, but that is entirely impersonal. As opposed to the essence of the Vedas, or the conclusion of the Vedas, is that the absolute truth is a person, an absolute person, the supreme person, the original person, and that everything about that person and everything about the realm in which he dwells, which is the spiritual world, is variegated and expresses things about him, the way, things he likes, the things he likes to do, and so forth, and that those are also reflected in a perverted way within the material world. And the emphasis there is on in a perverted way. The material world is a perverted or skewed or twisted reflection of the spiritual world. So everything that we find in the material world has a reflection in the spiritual world. So when Lord Krishna comes in his original form, or in any of his forms, any of his expansions or incarnations, the Mayavadis look at the form of the Lord as being a part of the illusion of the material nature. And therefore we call them Mayavadis. Mayavadis. So here it's spoken of concerning Sutta Goswami as repeating that which Shukadev Goswami has spoken, saying that certain sages have spoken about Lord Krishna in this scene with Shalva as see, he's bewildered, he has fear, he's taken by surprise. Therefore, Lord Krishna, his form and his personality are a part of the illusory material nature. Because how can the Supreme be bewildered, or how can the Supreme have fear? And so the point of today's verse is to say that it is impossible for the Supreme Lord, who is infinitely knowledge, who is infinite knowledge, who is infinite perception, who is infinite power, who is everywhere present, and you can go on and speak of all of his infinite attributes and say that this makes it impossible for the Lord at any time to be bewildered. But Jiva Goswami, in the purport, has pointed out that Jiva Goswami, who is one of the chief disciples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, brings out the fact that the Lord does this for Leela. He does this for the sake of coming and playing and having relationships and taking part in human life here in the material world. But he always does so in his transcendental body. In fact, it's impossible for the Lord to ever have anything but a spiritual body that is transcendental and is non-different from his soul. So you and I, if we have a little bit of perception, or if we're even a little bit logical, we can discern that there's a difference between our body and soul. That the soul is one thing and the body is another. The soul is eternal. It's non-different qualitatively than Lord Krishna. But the body and the covering of the body, including the mind, intelligence, and ego, can be bewildered. In fact, they're ceaselessly bewildered until we melt away the subtle material body through devotional service, as text 32 brings out, and we dispatch the material or bodily concept of life. We're continuously bewildered, continuously hoodwinked by the material energy, to think that the body is the self, to think that the body and the soul are intrinsically and hermetically bound up together, that you can't separate them, so that whatever the body is doing, the spirit is doing, the spirit soul is doing. So that's the illusion that we perceive. And it causes us to live for sense gratification. The body and the senses are constantly calling out for pleasure. Actually, the soul itself is constantly calling out for pleasure, because we are pleasure-seeking entities. Qualitatively, we're just like the Lord. The Lord is constantly playing, having fun with his pleasure potency, Srimati Radharani. And Krishna is actually one. But eternally, it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that he becomes two in order to have relationship. And then the two continue to expand out as every living entity, of which there are infinite, numberless amount of living entities. So the Lord is pleasure-seeking. He wants to have relationship and taste the emotions and the rasa of relationship. Therefore, he comes in the form of a human being. He looks like a human being, acts like a human being. But if we examine his transcendental acts, the things that he actually does, he's anything but a human being. The things that he does are tremendous. And so, before we come to the 10th canto, we're encouraged by all of the sages in the Bhagavatam in the first 2 cantos, and especially Srila Prabhupada in his purports brings out the fact that we have to make our way through all the categories of Srimad Bhagavatam before we come to the 10th canto, so that we can come to understand how great Krishna really is, how awesomely variegated he is, not only within the spiritual world, but how he expands himself into the material world as the material energy and as numberless living entities and numberless forms and numberless colors and numberless smells and tastes and experiences, both in the spiritual world and in the material world. And he comes to show his pastimes to us. He doesn't need to come here to enjoy these things. He can enjoy them in the spiritual world. But he comes in order to display them to us. But unless we actually have a previous knowledge of Vedanta, or the conclusion of the Vedas, the conclusions of knowledge, which are summed up and commented upon in the first nine cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, then we'll come to the 10th canto and think that Krishna is an ordinary human being, an ordinary living entity, and that he's just a playboy. But the truth of the matter is that everything moving and non-moving in both the spiritual and material worlds is emanating from him, is being controlled and predominated by him. And that he quite literally is everything, and is the power and mover and doer, the only power, the only mover, the only doer. And everything that we express in terms of power, moving and doing, can only be because we are parts and parcels of his own life. So what I want to do at this point is, with that brief introduction, is open it up for some discussion. And in doing that, I want to ask a question or a couple of questions, and you're free to answer with whatever kind of realization or thoughts that you may have, and we can discuss this topic very practically. So I would like to ask this: why is it important that we understand that Lord Sri Krishna is not only spiritual and transcendental, but that he's the source of everything, and that he is not and does not partake of the material, illusory material nature when he comes in a human form? Why is this important? Why is this so important that all of our acharyas, all of the sages of devotional service within the Shastra, point out that impersonalism is the number one greatest error that condemns one to hellish life in one's next lives? Why is it that this type of thought is so condemned, and why is it so important that we understand Krishna, his body and his soul, are identical and that they're spiritual? So let's open it up. Do we have the second microphone? So Chris, please.
Thank you very much for that reading. My thoughts on that, or reflection, is like an actor on a stage who knows the storyline. He knows how it's going to end, and he's just playing the part to experience the joy of the show. And so Krishna comes in to play these qualities. Oh, I'm shocked. Oh, bewilderment, just to play. But in the end, he knows the ending. He knows the beginning. He knows the story. And it's still fun to play.
Yes. So he sort of pretends to forget so that he can have fun. And yeah, this is exactly the point. There's the story we read this morning, the story of within the Chaitanya Charitamrita, when this unfolding of Prakashananda Saraswati is taking place. It's brought out the story of Jaya and Vijay and the four Kumaras, and how Jaya and Vijay, of course it's just hinted at, it's really talking about the four Kumaras, but it's brought out that Jaya and Vijay, these transcendental guards in Vaikuntha, in one of the Vishnu planets, the four Kumaras come as, in their form as four youths, four toddlers, and Jaya and Vijay mistake them for something other than what they are, the greatest sages in the universe. And they become condemned. And we know from the story, if we've heard the story, that Jaya and Vijay are condemned by the four Kumaras to become demons for 3 lifetimes. So they come to the material world and they become demons. But ultimately, the reason why that happens, there's the kind of the bottom line, which is that they blaspheme these great sages, so they're cursed to have demoniac life for 3 lives. But the top line reason is that Krishna likes to come and fight. He likes a good fight. So he sends them down here. He orchestrates this whole scene where they blaspheme the 4 sages. The 4 sages condemn them to become demons for 3 lifetimes. And then Krishna comes 3 different times and he fights with them. Once as a boar, and then for one of them he comes as a boar, and for the other he comes as Nrsingadev, the half man, half lion form of the Supreme Lord. And then he eventually comes as Lord Krishna in the pastimes that we're reading about here. But the point is that he likes to fight. So yes, that's exactly right. He comes and he allows himself to enter into some form of forgetfulness, what we call Atma Maya, but ultimately he knows. And this is so that he can have fun. Yeah, of course. He likes to play. Anyone else? Why is this important that we understand these distinctions? Yes.
I've heard it explained that it shows just how powerful the illusory energy is. Mm-hmm. That even Krishna can take time to appreciate its all-encompassing features. There are several instances in Aghasura and this one. Also sometimes the great devotees like Dhruva, they get completely bewildered, or Krishna is saying he seems to be bewildered, but he's simply appreciating just how powerful that material energy is, so that hopefully we will think, not up to me to defeat that. We're going to need Maya Jakshina Prakriti Sriti Sacharacharam. Krishna only can deliver us from the material energy.
Yes, yes. I often have heard my Guru Maharaj, Keshava Bharati, Das Goswami Maharaj, quote Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu, who was asked in a talk, why is Maya so strong? Why is the illusory energy so strong? And the answer that he gave, Gopi Paranadhana gave, was that Maya is so strong because Krishna is so sweet and so wonderful and so blissful to know and to relate to, that Maya has to be very strong in order for us to forget. So yeah, that's an interesting distinction, that Krishna comes and he appreciates his own material energy and the strength of it. Very nice. Anyone else? Why? Yes, Jorge, Dr. Jorge.
Yeah, I think it's important that we realize these distinctions. That the reason why the Lord comes and why He lets Himself fall into this apparent mood of bewilderment, so that we don't confuse the Lord for just a regular human being or a regular person. Jai Shishirada Nilamadava. Ki Jai. Yeah, so that we can understand why the Lord acts this way, so that we don't make an offense to think that the Lord is just an ordinary human being that falls into illusion like every single one of us.
Can you say that once? I'm sorry, one more time, because the curtains were closing. I want to make sure we all
That it's important that we make this distinction, that the Lord lets Himself be bewildered by this energy, apparently, so that He can enjoy this pastimes and enjoy with His devotees. And if we can understand this, we don't fall into the trap or confusion of thinking that the Lord is just a regular human being that's just illusion like every single one of us.
Yes, very good. Anyone else? Sarva Bauma.
To understand our own position or sambandha, we have to understand the distinction between us and Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we don't, then we'll, as you mentioned, we'll drift into nebulous area of impersonalism, or become and the desire to serve and love Krishna will be obscured by this unclarity.
Very nice. Thank you, Prabhu. This is akin to what Jorge was saying as well, but from a different angle, that it's important to understand the Lord's nature when He comes in a seemingly human form, so that we don't lose a sense of the distinction between the Lord and ourselves, and that we understand the ways in which we are one with the Lord and the ways in which we are different from the Lord. And the essence of our philosophy, the essence of the absolute truth and how we understand it, is achintya, inconceivably, beta abeta tattva. In other words, inconceivably both one and different. And everything in our philosophy can be summed up under these headings. Who is the Lord? What is our relationship to Him? What is our nature? What is the material energy, and how do we relate to it? How does the Lord relate to it? And so forth. These distinctions are absolutely necessary so that we don't forget who we are. We have to remember who the Lord is in order to remember who we are and actually have a proper relationship with Him. Excuse me. In order to properly relate with Him. Otherwise, we wind up becoming impersonalists, like Prakashananda Saraswati, who was a great blasphemer. He was he could not even say the name of Krishna, it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And, or Hari, he couldn't say the names. He was so inimical to the personal form of the Lord. Therefore, he misunderstood who Lord Chaitanya was. Even though Lord Chaitanya was coming and behaving as a devotee, he is the Supreme Lord Himself. And so he was not able to understand Lord Krishna's incarnation and His Krishna Leela, and he couldn't understand Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, he was greatly condemned. And if we know who the Lord is and we know who we are, then we'll have a desire to serve the Lord. So, Anyone else? Pranahari Prabhu.
I liked Mataji's point yesterday in class about how Krishna was not experiencing the material energy. His lamentation and bewilderment was not material energy, it was the spiritual energy, because she quoted from the Nectar of Devotion, he experienced the stimulus for love because he saw Vasudeva, his father. He knew it wasn't, but because he just saw the form of him, that triggered in his heart that thought of that relationship. And so he just, basically got a little bewildered by the spiritual, his pleasure potency, this internal potency, that rasa, spiritual rasa. And then he was like, well, I got a job to do. Which is also under the spiritual energy. Krishna doesn't have a job, but it's all pastime in that sense. But so I thought that was a good point about how Krishna is basically the difference, understanding that Krishna is not having a material body means that bodies are spiritual. There are spiritual bodies, spiritual forms, spiritual activities, and therefore a spiritual energy of which the stimulus for form and activities and qualities and everything is not is not executed by force of karmic reactions, but executed voluntarily out of a desire for loving exchanges, selfless, transcendental loving exchanges between the Lord and his devotees. And so that's like our goal. So if we don't even understand that first point, then we can't have as our prayojana, we won't have the proper goal. It won't be aiming, our aim won't be correct.
Jai. Very nice. So just to kind of bounce off of that, then what we understand from the Shastra is that these pastimes that we see in the 10th canto and elsewhere are actually manifestations of the spiritual world. They're actually manifestations of the Dham. And Lord Krishna is acting out those pastimes, even though they're manifesting here and can be seen in the material world when he's manifested in these pastimes. Of course, they're always taking place, and we don't see them. But when he comes and he manifests them, this is literally a manifestation of the spiritual world and the pastimes that are taking place in the spiritual world. And therefore, as a result, we can know, and the Shastra actually speaks this plainly in places that, and Pranahari brought this out, that even in the spiritual world, when these pastimes are not manifested here, when they're in the spiritual world, the Lord he allows himself to have these experiences there, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So this is what we call Atma Maya. There's Mahamaya, which is a shadow manifestation of the Lord's impersonal energy. It's a reflection. And there is the person of Mahamaya, but it's a reflection or a shadow of his internal energy. But in the spiritual world, it's called Atma Maya, and it is actually a manifestation of the Lord's internal potency by which he allows himself to be partially covered over in order to play with us like children in Goloka Vrindavan. And we're covered over as well, even though on a certain level we know this is the Supreme Lord. In order to have our relationship with him as friends and lovers and parents and servants and all the variations of those, which is unique for each and every one of us. That Atma Maya actually covers over both the Lord and the devotees in such a way that we can all play like children in the spiritual world. So it's for Leela, it's for relationship. And but there's also a level where the Lord, he's spinning all the universes into existence, and every living entity has his presence there fully and completely in their hearts, even though it's manifested partially as the Paramatma or Super Soul. He's completely there. And yet, in the spiritual world, he's manifesting himself in his original form as a little boy, and allows himself to have this relationship with us where he becomes, we can, there's one example that's given where the young boy jumps on his shoulders and says, "Oh, you're a big man. Look at you. I'm bigger than you." These types of relationships where we can play as children with him. So it's a wonderful distinction. What I want to do now is I want to transition. Thank you very much for your realizations and your thoughts. And the sum of all of our realization is greater than our individual realization. So it's nice to hear from everyone and to bring that all together to a final conclusion. And that is, how do we get from where we are to the place where we can actually relate to the Lord, not by relating to the reflection of his internal energy, Mahamaya, and being bewildered and thinking that we're actually separate from him. How can we get from there to where we can relate to him on a personal level in the spiritual world? What is that process? So I want to scroll down to text 32, read it again, and make some comments. It says, by virtue of self-realization, fortified by service rendered to his lotus feet, devotees of the Lord dispel the bodily concept of life, which has bewildered the soul since time immemorial. Thus, they attain eternal glory in his personal association. How then can that supreme truth, the destination of all genuine saints, be subject to illusion? In other words, because we can enter into his association in full knowledge in our eternal glory, even though we have been bewildered by time immemorial by that material energy, the fact that we can proves that the Lord himself is spiritual and he's not bewildered. But the important part is pointing out that it's by virtue of self-realization that is fortified by service rendered to his lotus feet. Devotees of the Lord dispel the bodily concept of life. So it's by devotional service. It's not by studying the Shastra. It's not by austerities. It's not by our intellectual prowess. It's by the causeless mercy of the Lord that grants to us the freedom to be able to serve his lotus feet. And by this devotional service, the material body, especially the mind, intelligence, and false ego, according to Kapila Deva, are literally melted away, are dissolved away. So each of us have this covering, and we talked about this last Saturday when I was asked to give class. Each of us have a covering that is manifested as a material, gross material body. But more than that, the important aspect of it is the material mind, intelligence, and ego that form a covering around the heart. And it's made up of the total material energy, but manifested as all the particular elements that we liked and desired, so that it becomes our particular covering. So it's the senses, the 10 senses, the 5 knowledge acquiring, 5 working senses, the sense objects, the 5 material elements, the 3 modes of material nature, The mind, intelligence, and ego all make up this total material energy, and based upon your past deeds and actions, and your current deeds and actions and your desires, there's a covering that gives you the bodily concept of life, that makes you think you're born in a certain place and have certain parents and have done certain things and have certain qualities, and you identify with the clothes that you wear and the car that you drive and the house that you have and your bank account and all of these things. But you're none of those things. You're none of those things. You're hidden away underneath all of those things. So how do we get underneath all that stuff, all that bodily concept of life where we think that the body is the self? And that there's my and mine, there's me and those things that I possess. It's through devotional service. It's by going through the process of, under guidance, hearing, chanting, worshiping, remembering the Lord, hearing the Shastra, hearing the holy names, hearing the voice of the spiritual master and of the great acharyas and pure devotees. It's by reciting these things for others, by chanting the Maha Mantra through japa and kirtan, by gazing at the form of the deities, understanding that even their visible form, even though you can't hear it, is a sound vibration. The very form, down to the smallest detail. I was looking at Lord Nilamadava today, Lord Krishna. Stunning. I don't think I've ever seen him yet. I haven't been here that long, but I haven't seen him. So stunning. He's always stunning. But today he was exceptionally stunning. And the detailed paint on his feet and on his forearm and on his face, all of these things are sound vibration. By taking in these details, taking in his beautiful smile and the shape of his eyes and the gaze that's ever changing but the same. These things are sound vibration. And as we hear the sound vibration of the holy names, the forms, the pastimes, these things are dissolving away little by little, the material covering. It's like the Arani wood that's mentioned by Lord Krishna to Uddhava in the Uddhava Gita, Canto 11, where he gives devotional, so he talks about devotional service and the burning away of the material covering as the Arani wood that the Brahmin uses for fire sacrifice. And within the Rani wood, fire is latent. It exists in there. Of course, fire exists in all material elements, and especially in anything that's flammable. But in Arani wood especially, fire is latent in that wood. And by certain mantras, by certain sound vibration, the Brahmana brings the latent fire from inside the wood to the surface so that the wood can be burned and used for sacrifice. And as a result, that wood becomes completely consumed and turned to ashes. In that same way, the material covering is like Arani wood, hard and unyielding. But inside of that Arani wood, of the material covering, is the Paramatma and the Atma, you and the Lord, both one and different within the heart. And as the sound vibration goes into the ears and we pay attention to it with rapt attention, listening to the sound vibration in all of these ways, the Arani wood is drawn, the fire within the Arani wood of the heart is drawn out to the surface, and the wood burns as we offer Sankirtan Yajna to the Lord. And eventually that wood of the material covering turns to ashes. So I encourage you to not take these things as theoretical knowledge that we've discussed today, but that they can be and are at a latent level the living experience of every living entity. And they can become our conscious experience. This is the purpose for the human form of life. It's the very purpose for which we take a human form, is to do devotional service like this and to melt away, burn away, dissolve away the material covering and re-enter our constitutional position before Lord Krishna and relate to him, play with him, laugh with him, eat with him in the spiritual world. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki, all the assembled devotees ki, Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha, Patitanam Pavanyebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.